Full Contact. In association with Mitsubishi Motors, drive your ambition.
Hello and welcome to Brian Moore's Full Contact with the Telegraph and Mitsubishi Motors. The Rugby World Cup, well, it's underway, and what an opening weekend it was in Japan. England picked up the required bonus point against Tonga, but the performance left a lot to be desired against a side which was ranked 15th in the world. Former England hooker and World Cup finalist George Chuter will join us later to explain where Eddie Jones' side can improve in their next game. Ireland laid down a marker in their clash with Scotland on Sunday morning. Is this a timely return to form for Joe Schmidt's side, or were Scotland just absolutely crap? There's no other word for it, is there? We'll be joined by the former Leinster and Munster player and Irish Times journalist Liam Toland, who will reflect with us on that game. The pick of the opening weekend's ties was obviously on Saturday morning in Yokohama as the defending champions New Zealand saw off the challenge of South Africa. But both teams looked sharp, potential finalists, and we'll be speaking with the former All Black Zinzan Brook about how the New Zealand public are feeling after that win. But first up, Wales have opened their campaign with a win over Georgia. Delighted to say we have the former Wales and British and Irish Lions fullback in the studio today. It's Lee Byrne. Hello, Lee.
Hello, Brian.
A welcome return to try scoring for Wales. That, to me, was the most important thing. There's been a dearth of those. How would you rank the opening performance?
Yeah, just like you said, 6 tries. I can't remember the last time Wales scored 3 tries in a game, let alone 6. So, for me, it was a positive. You couldn't really, looking at that second half, you couldn't really take much out of it. Apart from Georgia didn't go 5 phases without over 5 phases. When you come up against Fiji and Australia, they're going to be going 15, 20 phases, frequently. So the only person who'd be happy with that today would be Sean Edwards, the defensive coach, because they had a good workout off the Georgians. The players were blowing. They found their lungs, the humidity, and they'd be happy with that first game, I think.
Well, the ideal build-up wasn't there because of the injury to Gareth Anscombe in particular, and a little bit about the controversy betting stuff around Rob Howley. What on earth do you make of that? Very strange.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm the same as everybody else. It's allegations at the moment. What I can say, I think the WRU were done well in, swiftly, going out there and removing any doubts of, before it all got out of hand. And, that's what they did. The players weren't unsettled, obviously, by today's performance. It was all dealt with really quickly, and fair play to them. So until these allegations come to light, we can't comment on it. It's just, we didn't think it'd be ideal, but Wales showed today that, they're here for the tournament and moving on.
Didn't you and Rob have a bit of a falling out?
I was waiting for that. That's in my book if you want to buy it. But I won't say no more. I'll leave you buy the book. You can get it in Tesco's for £1 now in the bargain bucket. But we did after the World Cup 2011. I went to Claremont. My international career sort of faltered, and I never played for Wales again actually after the 2011 World Cup. So pretty grim memories.
Well, Stephen Jones be drafted in to replace Howley. I mean, you obviously know him as a player and a person. What sort of difference will he bring to what Howley would have brought?
I think it's really soon that they're going to be changing anything differently now, moves, so you can't but I just, going back to it, I just feel like the Welsh public now is on a bit of a hide into nothing really now, because if Wales do well, they're going to say Stephen Jones brought in all these new moves, done all this positively for training, and if Wales lose, they're going to blame Howley. So it is a bit unfortunate, but I think Stephen Jones, he's a great man. He's one of the most skillful players I've ever played with, and rugby brain is phenomenal. He's trained many of these players for Wales with the Scarlets. So he's a familiar face. He's not someone they've just brought in randomly. So I think Stephen will have a really positive effect on the team. And in the training sessions that he is doing, he'll be running his own skill sessions, etc. So it's a good move.
I mean, we're talking, and we mentioned earlier on the try scoring. To me, the Wales back three is phenomenal when it's on song, and in the warm-up games, and for far too long for me, we just haven't seen enough of them. Is it a question of them looking for more work or being more positive when counter-attacks present themselves, or what? Because to me, Wales need to get them into the game as often as they can.
I honestly think you can't coach, being instinctive. Look at the All Blacks back three, the possession they had against South Africa. They didn't have that much possession, but as soon as they get a sniff of that try line or a turnover, they instinctively, the rugby players, I think, foremost, you can't coach that into what they've got. I don't think we have that in the Welsh team at the moment. I think, we got some great players who can play to a structure, but instinctive, are they rugby players? I don't think so, not like the best teams like New Zealand, etc. So, but yeah, there was Josh Adams was a positive today for me. I think it's five line breaks, 100 odd metres, one try to show for it, but he looked really dangerous. George North can get into the game a bit more for my liking. I know he scored that try at the end, but he needs to be looking for work, especially against Australia and Fiji, and going into the quarters hopefully.
Well, we're going to chat about those. Just as a general proposition, do you think Wales have got the squad depth and the talent to go all the way?
Injuries aside, I think we'll get out of the pool, and I'm hoping we can go further in the quarterfinals, but I'm not quite sure. I think there's some strong teams out this year and really open World Cup. Ireland, England, New Zealand, Australia all look at South Africa. I think they're looking a lot stronger than us at the moment. I mean, it just depends how Gatland usually peaks his players just right, and coming into this tournament we didn't have a great build-up in the pre-warm-up games. We had 2 hard camps to Turkey, so let's wait and see. Hopefully Wales can go stronger as the tournament goes on, but I'm not quite sure at the moment. I think out of the pool is probably our best chance.
Well, England started off their campaign with a 35-3 bonus point victory over Tonga. But I think underwhelming is a phrase that a lot of people are using. I don't think that's unfair. Let's speak to George Chuter, regular contributor to the podcast and co-host, former England hooker and World Cup finalist himself. Hello, George.
Hello, Maura.
Eddie Jones was quick to stress that the tournament is a marathon and not a sprint. However, if you're going to run a marathon, you want to start off jogging fairly smoothly and not stuttering about. And England did that. What do you think the reason for that was?
It's difficult to say, really. I think that they looked so slick and together during the friendlies. I guess perhaps we got a bit of a false sense of security with England, perhaps, and you forget actually how much of an impact an opening World Cup match can have on people's psyche. There's a lot of guys out there who've not played in the World Cup before, on both sides of the ball, actually, and that does play a role. Is the getting used to conditions, the underfoot and the atmospheric conditions. So, it will be very frustrating. There were times Eddie Jones was seen on TV banging a table and all this sort of stuff. But the bottom line is England have come away from the first group game against a sort of a sticky opponent with a bonus point win. And a defensive, no tries conceded. So, it's going to be frustrating, and you want to expect England to be better than that next hit out, and they'll need to be better than that further down the road. But it is early in the tournament.
And there are a couple of big positives from England. The form of Itoje was very good, and Manu Tuilagi. Now, there are a lot of people new to rugby who actually haven't seen Tuilagi play, anything like what we know he can play. That was a taster. If he stays fit, and I think it's crucial, I think we all agree it's crucial.
Yep.
How much more can he get? How much more can we bring from him?
I mean, if he gets back to full fitness and back to his form of sort of 7 years ago, 2012, big ask, I know, but back then he was one of the best players in the world, and who can forget him taking New Zealand apart at Twickenham when England won? Whether he can get back to that again now, he's 7 years older, and there's a bit more mileage on the clock. The injuries do slow you down, no matter who you are. But if you can get somewhere near that, then we've got potentially one of the players of the tournament wearing an England shirt, and that's great news. It's early days for him. It's early days to be sort of banging the drum and calling him a saviour. We've done that before on a few occasions, and they've been false starts due to his injury malhaps, or shall we say? But yeah, he started off in the friendly games very well. He looked very powerful, very lean, very fit, and he's picked up where he left off against Tonga at the weekend.
Hi George, it's Lee Byrne here, mate.
Hello Byrne, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. USA up next on Thursday. What changes can you see Eddie Jones making, personal and in the gameplay?
I don't think there'll be too much game planning change. We're on a sort of road to the World Cup now, so it's very difficult to sort of keep chopping and changing. They want to get a style and get the players used to playing that. I would imagine there'll be a few changes up front. Someone like Billy Vunipola has played a lot of rugby. Granted, he's been out of injured for a while, so there's a possibility they'll shuffle the back row resources a bit. Prop wise, they've got a good depth of props, and some of them got game time on the weekend, but there might be some changes there. I guess a lot of it depends on what his long-term plans is with the 10-12, well, 10 midfield conundrum, whether he's actually sort of hung his hat on George Ford playing 10 and Farrell at 12, or actually whether Henry Slade comes back in and Manu moves to 12, and the sort of the Farrell Tuilagi Slade combination comes in midfield. I'm not sure at all. I'm obviously an old front row forward, so I don't understand these complicated things, but. I was convinced that Farrell will be 10 in England's big games in the World Cup, and I still have an inkling that's going to be the case because, there was George Ford has had a fantastic season at Leicester in pretty adverse circumstances. He's played well for England of late on the front foot, but I just do think Eddie Jones can be a bit cagey at times, and I think he'd prefer the safety net of having Owen Farrell at 10 just to sort of guide the game around, rather than someone like George Ford who's very much a go-forward player.
Well, I think you're probably right. I mean, Slade, he looked to have a bit of a knock on his knees, almost, and you don't know how that is, but you've also got Joseph there who's looked impressive. Look, you expect maximum bonus points against the USA. I'm pretty sure they'll get those. What about this? The 2 sevens, Underhill and Curry. Do you think that works? Do you think he's going to be tempted to repeat it in the big games, and i.e. France and Argentina?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is an area I thought that Eddie Jones had made his mind. I think Mark Wilson was probably the standout player for England over the last sort of 12 months of fixtures. Obviously, Billy Vunipola's nailed on at number 8. But I mean, Curry and Underhill, they've given him a real headache. They're both playing, but I thought actually Underhill was very, very quietly good on the weekend. He made some very, very big runs, and he's a lot quicker than you sort of give him credit for. I think he pops up all over the place. And Curry, we know what a good player he could potentially be. So that's a real headache for Eddie Jones now. And I guess come the French game, come the Argentinian game, we'll obviously see what he has in mind in terms of his first choice back row. I do prefer the balance with a guy like Mark Wilson at 6, and then either Underhill or Curry at 7. I think it's just a better balance to the back row. But I mean, Australia made a big success of the Pocock-Hooper pairing. Perhaps that's what Eddie Jones got in the back of his mind. But that's a really big selection issue, and particularly if they all stay fit. I mean, Curry and Underhill have had their injury issues. Obviously, Billy Vunipola as well. So it may be that his hand gets forced. But that's a tough decision to make. So that between those sort of 4 players, I think.
Well, France, typically French, good first half against Argentina. Then in the end, you could make a case for them being a bit lucky, and had Argentina had a bit more poise and being able to spot the long pass when there were glaring overlaps, then they might well have won. Barring injuries and all sorts of other things, all things being equal, etc., etc., do you think either of them have enough to beat England?
I don't think so. I mean, actually, I was really quite disappointed with Argentina, particularly in the first half. I just think they looked very flat. They didn't look anything like the first game of the World Cup against the French. I was expecting them to be bulging eyeballs and all that, but that they were very subdued in the first half. The scrum went well, which will be pleasing for them, but not much else. They didn't have any zip in attack. I do think they don't have a 10 really to run the game, and I think that really costs them when it comes to the bigger games, particularly as we've watched them in the Rugby Championship. That when push comes to shove, they just don't have enough direction from the fly-half position, I don't think, to really challenge. But then, in the second half, they were almost a different team, and I think actually probably out of the two of them, I think Argentina will probably stand a better chance against England, just simply because they're a bit more physical up front. I think they've got a bit more nous. If they can sort of game plan going forward out, then I think they've got a real chance. The French have got some fantastic players, and I think Dupont and Penaud and all the young guys whose dads we played against, they seem to be. I think Untermack looked very good. They've got some fantastic players. I just don't see them stringing it together for 60, 70 minutes, which is what you need to consistently do to firstly get out of the pool and get into the knockout stages, but then actually progress. And I do think there's a real question about their pack. I don't think their front five is particularly powerful in the set piece, and I don't think it's particularly dominant in ball carrying. So actually they're almost playing with one hand time behind their back at times.
Well, we won't have long to wait, but thanks very much. I think at this point it's right to give a special mention to the Tongan back rower, Nasi Manu, who was diagnosed with testicular cancer last year, but he made a full recovery and came off the bench yesterday. So good to see him back. Lee, obviously, very difficult after one game, but we were chatting earlier about England's depth in their squad. Good enough to go all the way?
Probably won't be liked for this in Wales, but yeah, I think they are. I really do. I know you can't look much into the games, into the warm-up games. Been said in the past, but I just like the way they play and the power they've got, the strength and depth they got. I think this got to be the strongest going into this World Cup, even better than New Zealand. It's just. The questions on everyone's mind is if they go behind, have they got the ability to come back and win games? They've shown in the past they haven't. For me, that'd be the only question mark. But physically, personnel, I think they have. They've definitely got the ability there.
Well, one of the big clashes over the weekend was Ireland versus Scotland. It turned out not to be much of a competition after only a few minutes. Ireland eventually stretching out 27-3 winners over Scotland. Let's discuss that with Liam Toland, the former Leinster and Munster back rower, and now the Irish Times journalist. A perfect start for Ireland, bonus point against Scotland, but you do have to question this. Whilst Ireland were impressive, and how bad was Scotland, and to what degree did both of those affect the result?
I think I was fascinated, Brian, by the pre-match interview by Gregor Townsend, who, it was kind of a throwaway comment, but it's still an answer. He was asked by the interviewer pitch side, what did he say to his team as the last thing before he left the pitch? And he simply said he asked them to deliver your best performance. And that struck me as something very interesting. It was a throwaway comment, but Joe Smith doesn't look for the best performance from his players. He looks for his players to do their job. And I think that was the fundamental difference, that Ireland didn't do a whole lot really of sensational, eye-opening rugby, but their pack, their front five, were ruthless in how they went about doing their job. And there was a number of examples of that in the match. I think Gary Ringrose took a ball, our outside centre, and took it off around the side of a defensive fringe, and Anthony Watson came in, and the open side for Scotland, and just really threatened that ball, and the two props, Cian Healy and Tyke Furlong, came in and smashed. You question maybe their technique, but they absolutely smashed Hamish Watson and knocked him back, and the threat of losing the ball was gone. Ireland kept the ball, and Gary Ringrose was safe. That was a subtle difference. The Irish line-up was 12 out of 12. The Irish scrum was very impressive. The back three that we're worried about, in particular Jordan Larmour, thought stood up, and if you just look at Andrew Conway, the right winger for Ireland, his work ethic and his general play was fantastic. And then you look at where Scotland have threats. For me, I have a real concern about Greg Laidlaw. He's starting at 9. I think Ali Price, the scrum half, came on, made a huge difference. But the front five just didn't give them a platform. I was very disappointed with Johnny Gray and Gilchrist. They just didn't give an impact. And you look then at the full back, the real threat, Stuart Hogg. Huge involvement in the opening 20 minutes, but really didn't influence the game. In fact, a lot of errors crept in. So himself and Russell didn't impact the game, and I think part of that was their front five, the Scottish front five that is, simply didn't give them the platform.
Well, when the weather, closed in, the rain came, and the game was won by then, Ireland quite rightly just said, we've got what we want out of this game. You play from a long way away, and Scotland just couldn't do that. It looks as though the sort of traditional tight style of play which saw them go unbeaten into 2018 and the precision that was there is back, at least in part. Good enough to beat Scotland, but likely to have probably South Africa in the quarterfinals. Good enough to beat them?
Well, I think that we must temper the performance. Look, Ireland needed to win this game and needed to win it in the manner that they did because of the question marks coming into the game about the line out, about Rory Best, etc. Now, the big thing here is, I think I agree with you, Brian, you need to temper our emotions a bit and realise that Ireland put in a superb shift. But worryingly for Scotland, they didn't allow Scotland to play clearly, but there's a clear question, can Scotland play as well? So I think you're 100% right. The fixture list for us is very fortuitous. We play Japan next weekend, then we've Russia, so the Ireland B team will play against Russia. So the Stars will play again this weekend, and they have maybe 2.5, 3 weeks lead into that South African game, if that's who we play, which looks like it. And now Joe Smith's entire machine switches to that. I don't know what exact game plan is going, but if we go gunfight to gunfight, I think we're going to be in trouble, because there's a huge that South African side. What they did to the All Blacks in the opening 20 minutes would put the fear of God into anybody. It really would. And I don't think we have the athletes to be able to compete with that. So do we have a broader game that's going to move them around? And I think we've a much better kicking game the All Blacks have. So we certainly have a lot of different strengths that the All Blacks don't have. So it's going to be really, really interesting. The most important thing is getting that win. And in the manner of it, it takes a lot of pressure off Rory Best and a lot of pressure off the lineouts and a lot of pressure off other aspects of the game. And now there's a selection question. Does Rob Kearney come back in, etc., etc.? Who fills the midfield? Does Henshaw come back in? And what role would Carberry have? So it's a good place Ireland put them into. But I think you're right. We'd be foolish to think that we're ready for South Africa. We've a lot of work to do before we get there.
Hello, Liam. Lee Byrne here.
How are you doing, Lee?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. Much of Ireland's form in 2018 and in the past couple of years has been underpinned by Conor Murray and Johnny Sexton. How do you think they performed on the weekend?
Very interestingly, I think Conor Murray wasn't given enough credit. The amount of test matches he's played for Ireland, for Munster and for the Lions, and then you factor in his injury, his neck injury as well, and other niggling injuries. I looked all through the Six Nations, he looked wrecked. He looked like a guy not himself. He looked a shadow of himself. I think they've managed him expertly well. He looks very comfortable in his brief. He looked very, very comfortable at the weekend. I thought he was back to his energetic best. Sexton, there's huge concerns of. Is the guy fit? We don't know. And when the Irish management are saying, we don't know what key messages, is the guy able to kick or not? So we're very worrying. There's no doubt, Lee, if we want to progress beyond South Africa, we need those two guys at their absolute best. If they're not at their absolute best, all other bets are off. And there's a real concern. I have no concerns over Conor Murray now. I thought he did really, really well. Real concerns over Sexton and his fitness levels and being able to absolutely manage the game. And we know the style of game he plays too. He just loves taking the ball to the last nanosecond on the gain line before releasing it to outside backs, and he just gets continuously smashed. Yeah. So if he's carrying a leg thigh problem, the South Africans will find it, put it that way.
Liam, just a final question before you go. The rest of the pool games, on paper at least, I'm not saying they look easy, because none of these are, but they look reasonably straightforward. Have you any real concerns about any of the sides producing a surprise against you?
I think. Look, the Russia game. I spoke to Mark McDermott, who's I played with him here in Ireland. He's now the scrum coach and breakdown coach in Russia. It's an amazing story, Brian, what Russia are trying to do to get their rugby together. I don't think they're going to provide us with a problem. I'm not entirely sure Western Samoa in terms will threaten our fixture. It's their last game of the pool. Potential injuries can come from Western Samoa, as you well know. The worry for me is Jamie Joseph did something really interesting with Japan. About 12 months ago, he appointed himself the Sunwolves assistant or head coach of the B team, the reserve team, and he took an awful lot of the Japanese players into his training squad, and he spent about 12 months just drip feeding rugby matches and entirely preparing them for the rugby season that they're facing now in the World Cup. I think they were very jittery and nervous in the opening game, which is understandable. I think they're going to be an awful lot better than we saw them against Russia. So I think if there's a threat, I think it's a game that Ireland simply can't take lightly, and I'd expect Ireland to put in their strongest side, because I think the jump that Japan will have between the game against Russia and us will be huge, and that will provide a threat. Clearly we'll be the strong favourite, but that's my worry. That game could provide us with a couple of challenges that we need to think our way around.
Well, potential pitfalls. This is what a World Cup is like, as you know, but at least Ireland, at the moment, they look to have found some part of their mojo, which is a good point of view for you and their supporters. Thanks very much for joining us, Liam.
Okay, Brian, take care.
Top man, thank you. Scotland, Lee, what can you say? I mean, I tell you what, usually, at least with Scotland, you can guarantee they'll be dogged, they'll be cussed, because for whatever else they lack in terms of resources and so on, that's usually something they're able to supply. And we didn't even see that. I can't fathom how it went so badly wrong.
Yeah, and look into the build-up. They had France, Georgia home and away. Are they undercooked coming into this tournament? And you look at the other teams and they're saying, have they played too many games? I don't think so. It was a terrible performance from Scotland on the weekend. They'd be absolutely, they'd be tamping with it, and they got Japan to come in next as well. And there's always a surprise in a World Cup, as you know. Japan against South Africa 4 years ago. I really don't know. I just got this feeling Japan might turn Scotland over. It's the
last game of the pool, so who knows where the injury situation is going to be?
Yeah.
And if Scotland are going to get out of the pool, they'll have to do it without flanker Hamish Watson, because he's going to miss the tournament with a knee injury suffered during the game. The Edinburgh clubmate Magnus Bradbury will replace him. He's had a wretched series of injuries, and you feel very sorry for him. But without him, and he was probably the only, whilst he was on, the only guy who was even competitive at the breakdowns, where Ireland annihilated Scotland.
Yeah, and leading up to the Six Nations, he was absolutely immense when he came on in the last couple of games. We've seen the impact he had. So he's going to be a massive loss. It's just about Scotland just regathering it now, and as I said, building some momentum, what they have left. I know it's only the first game. We're talking like they're already out, but there's a lot of rugby to play. So they'll still be optimistic of getting out of the pool, but I'm not sure they can.
Full Contact, in association with Mitsubishi Motors. Everyone's ambitions are different. You can climb to the top, or you could take on uphill battles of a different kind. You can explore for hundreds of miles, or you could begin a bigger journey. You can make time fly, or you could make it stand still. The Mitsubishi SUV range. Drive your ambition.
Well, the tie of the weekend, if not the tournament, some people were saying, was obviously New Zealand and South Africa. It turned out that New Zealand were winners, 23-13. Time to speak to the former All Black legend. No, you're not a former legend, you're always a legend. Former All Black. Zinzan Brook's on the line. Hello, Zinny.
Hello, how are you?
Okay, mate. In the end,
good.
9 minutes possession in the first half, going 17-3 up, despite it be having 20 minutes under the cosh. What aspects of that will have pleased the All Blacks in particular?
What aspects?
Yeah.
Well, look, they can respond when the question's asked. I felt that the All Blacks were outplayed in probably in about the first 18 to 20 minutes, but there was a little a window that opened up in about 4 minutes, and then the All Blacks punished the South Africans by making it rather easy for the All Blacks by kicking the ball down their throat, and New Zealand's responded in classic fashion by running it and scored two quick tries.
I don't think many people necessarily understood the Bowden-Barrett change to 15. Not just a case of bringing Moy in, but more when you saw this game, just how potent Barrett can be as a receiver, off loose phase when the game opens up. He just appears, he's got that influence, and you saw that work really well. Do you think it's likely to be repeated?
Well, I think I just think they just need to have their cover because we've lost McKenzie. We've lost McKenzie, and I think they actually wanted to have some cover for Ben Smith, just in case that situation arises. Yes, and I know that that he's the incumbent number 10, but what the quality of what he can do is to change positions. Just one test match playing at 10, and then straight away he can play 15. So he's an exceptional individual. But you can't underestimate the quality of what Bowden Barrett can bring to him. And when there's an opportunity that arises, which there will be, he can punish very good sides.
Hello, Zinny. It's Bernie. It is, mate. Lee Byrne. How are things?
Hello, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. How's the golf?
Golf's all right. Yeah,
right, New Zealand's path to the semi-final now looks pretty straightforward. Canada, Namibia and Italy in their pool. How do you expect Steve Hansen to manage the squad for the remainder of the tournament?
Well, look, they've just got to keep the tempo up. I don't think you're going to see too many changes of what the style that they've played. And then try and actually build it up into a quarter final. But even at this moment in time here, even if you look just one game after the pool games here in the quarter final, the potential is right here and now that we're going to be coming up against either Scotland, which on their performance, which I felt that they were very, very poor, but. Look, I know they can perform better, but Steve Hansen's just got to keep the tempo in the same sort of style and just keep the tempo up. That's pretty much. I don't know. You're gonna have the potential is whichever side actually they feel Steve Hansen and co feel. I think you're going to see some high scores coming in here. Because I've watched some of the couple of teams. I watched Namibia the other day, and I think they're going to get punished.
Well, social media was once again questioning some of the refereeing performances. This always happens. I think some of your compatriots still going about Wayne Barnes, but one of the more important things, a lot of people, like me included, felt there was too much leeway given around offside, in and around the breakdown. What was your impression? Not just in this game, in all the opening games.
Yes, Well, I think that comes back down to I think it's got to come back down to like the high tackling. I like the stance of that zero tolerance on the high tackles, and the same situation on the offside. These guys they're trying to push the boundaries and keep them offside. I just feel that the referee should just punish them. And I have felt that there's in a couple of games, certainly with some of the games, the referee decisions, I have to scratch my head a few times to try and work out their interpretation. So it hasn't been the best, but what it has been is it has been consistent.
Zinni, before you go, I know speaking to you during the middle of the week before the tournament started, I wouldn't say you were nervous, but there was a little apprehension about how it might turn out and so on. Are you happier now you've seen the All Blacks come through a game like that?
Yes, I am, because I was nervous because of the performances coming right back to the Argentinian game, and then the Australia game in Perth, and then their response. So there's a little bit of a little bit up and down certainly there was certainly up and down in their performances against the Brilliance World Cup games, and then I was concerned about for South Africa, because I felt the momentum was with South Africa. They're running, and Erasmus has rallied their troops within the last 12 to 18 months, and to be quite significant, and they've been fantastic. And I just thought the opportunity there was for South Africa to actually punish and put down a statement right there and then, because I think they can. I don't think we've seen the best of. I don't think we've seen the best of South Africa, and I think South Africa will actually come and play and will physically intimidate a lot of the oppositions. But in true style, the All Blacks actually embraced all what South Africa threw at them. But I have to say that the All Blacks responded in a way that which was very encouraging going forward. I wouldn't say that was the polished performance, but it's putting down a marker just for everyone to go, right. If you're gonna come and win this World Cup, you got to make sure that you come and beat us, and you have to beat them with quality, and not just think that you're going to physically intimidate them, which South Africa did for a period of time, but it wasn't consistent enough.
Zinny, great to speak to you as always. Thanks very much.
Cheers, Money. Thank you.
Lee, just showed so little possession, bang, bang, 2 tries. Of all the teams, you just cannot afford to be loose against the Kiwis. And a lot of people talk about this, that and the other, but for me it's simply this. They do the basics more often under pressure than other teams do. And it looks simple, but it's not, and we know it's not. Making sure you're in the right line, making sure your depth is right, making sure the pass is in front so you don't have to slow down. All those things. And the reason they're very good is it looks so simple, but it's not.
Yeah, I've been on the end of it quite a few times. You think you're in the game 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and one mistake, you look up at the bottom of the ruck and they're the other end of the field, and you haven't even got off the floor yet. It's absolutely incredible. They're the only team that are capable of doing it. Like you said, they do the basics so well. I don't think there's many teams that like them. I watched some footage today of the new camera images from the World Cup, and you can it's basically, you can see how quick the All Blacks play. South Africa threw everything at them, and like Zinny rightly said, they put a marker down on the weekend and said, look, this is, if we're not coming for this, throw everything you can at us. And like I said, 1 or 2 mistakes by South Africa, and they got punished. And South Africa will get better, but I can see that being the final. I can see the repeat of that being the World Cup final. But New Zealand are going to get better, and so is South Africa. But they're just incredible, and the stars they have, and produce. Every World Cup there's a new star.
Well, I mean, it's cliched, but it just shows if you have 20 minutes like South Africa did, you better put points away.
Yeah, you better put 50 on it.
And even I don't care if you're just incrementally scoring in threes. It's important that you keep the scoreboard ticking over against them, because people forget 3 penalties or double penalty drop goal, that's a converted try.
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily have to be that, but you must keep it going forward. And going forward, one of the reasons why I think if England have all their ball carriers and play well, they do attack in a different way to South Africa. South Africa were very direct. It's 1 or 2 out wherever they're playing, and they're hitting. They were going to go down the blind side. To me, you simply have to vary the point of contact, because they're so good. They give very few penalties away. If you don't pull the defence and ask more questions about them first up tackling, you just don't get the forward ball. And then they've shown they're quite capable of soaking pressure up and then responding when they get there.
Yeah, that's right. England have got the Farrell forward. They got Daly, Watson. They got these runners. South Africa have got the likes of Chelsea and Colby. But that's one-off bits of magic that that's going to happen 2 or 3 times in a game. England have the capable of doing that, like you said, and shortening up New Zealand's defence. So. Yeah, it's like I said, I think they've heard it all before, and even going behind in games, New Zealand, we've seen them come back in the 82nd minute. That you just got to be, you got to play your World Cup game every game. I think to beat New Zealand.
Lee, you were part of the Welsh squad in New Zealand in 2011, and I covered that whole tournament, and Wales, had tremendous success until it all went famously wrong in the semi-final. What are your memories of that?
Well, the memories of the World Cup are not great. I never played for Wales again after 2011. So, no, but, I started the first game in Namibia. Scored a try in that game. Started against Fiji. And then after that, certain Mr. Halfpenny came along, and, I was surplus to requirements. But, in fairness, it was a breakthrough year for him that year. Deserved his opportunity. And, Wales deserved to get to the semi-final at least. And then we all know what happened there with the red card to Sam. It was unfortunate.
But what was the feeling like in the dressing room afterwards?
You can't describe it really. I don't think we really, we obviously knew it was a semi-final. We didn't realise, the severity of it. I didn't think it sunk in for myself for a couple of days later at least. Imagine how Sam was feeling as well at the time. It just it totally, we were all watching and you were commentating on it. It totally, I think it spoiled the spectacle of the whole game.
Was there a feeling that you've been cheated in some way?
No, I don't think so. Personally, I can say this. You're looking at it. I think it was a red card. I know I was obviously playing for Wales, but when you look back at it, it was the right decision probably at the time. So, but it was just the manner, obviously semi-final and the whole spectacle of it and the expectation. I think we could have gone on. Well, you've seen what happened in the final. It was France ran them close. So I think
Well, if it had been a different referee, they might well have won that.
Yeah, exactly. So it possibly could have been our best chance, to win a World Cup.
Well, actually, funny enough, Sam Warburton described the tackle in his book as one of the best of his career. He said it was never a red, but you can't say he's entirely neutral on this. For a lot of people from the outside, and I was a disinterested spectator on this, I could see why it was. It just came at a sort of time you'd seen other things, and in a semi-final, just to leap on this, If that standard had been applied throughout the whole World Cup, then there would be no element of doubt whatsoever. For a lot of people, even neutrals, it just seemed, this is the one where we're going to make an example. Well, there are lots of other things going on. So, you've got that. And as you say, I don't think there was... I tell you what, it's like this. It's not until you get to a final or you get to a win that you understand how close you've got with a semi-final, isn't it? Because you've not got that experience.
Exactly.
And perhaps, that was something for the Welsh players. I think there was a feeling that they got further than they thought they might. But when you get the opportunity, which is the one, you've got to take it irrespective of whether you're underdogs or you didn't think you were going to be there or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's knockout rugby, and you never know how far you're going to get. And like you said, the inconsistency of referees that World Cup was terrible. And if that was that tackle now, it definitely would be a send off. But back then, the things like that, worse things like that were going on, and it wasn't a red. So, the inconsistency was I think how we. Why we were so annoyed by it. And until you get to that semi-final, like you said, we probably didn't feel like, honestly, could we win it? I think Gatland's even come out and said that this World Cup is Wales' best team they've ever had. So obviously that tells you he probably didn't think we could get that far. So, chance gone begging, really.
Well, it's Australia up next. For a long time, Wales just could not get over the line against Australia. That's now gone by the by. If you'd have asked this question a year ago, not many people would have given Australia a prep. But anyone who has watched any World Cup know that Australia, however they do it, they do not turn up to World Cups and be uncompetitive. They just don't. And it won't be anything different against Wales. How do you feel about that game? What, if anything, do you see them doing differently? What do you think is needed to make sure they get the win?
Yeah, Michael Check, it was under so much pressure last year. It was incredible, and then they turned that, they went to beat New Zealand, then everybody was saying, here we go again. Then they lost 39-0 the next game. So it's been up and down for Australia. They're so stubborn come World Cups, and their backline is looking incredibly dangerous at the moment. Kirandrani, Will Genia, they're just ageless, and I think they're going to have their hands full. Like I said, they've been put through a workout today defensively, but Georgia didn't go through 5 phases. With Kurtley Beale, etc. These guys, they're going to be running it from everywhere, and Yeah, I think, like I said, it's just about defensively and looking after the threats on the wings. Like I said, Kirandrani is absolutely incredible at the moment. So, yeah, they're going to have their hands full, and I'm hoping we can come out of that game with a win.
All this is predicated on the game front football. I mean, everything is much easier when you're going forward, and one of the things that Wales have been able to do, they've been able to shore the gain line up. The first up tackling's been good, and then when breaks have been made, the scramble defence has been good. So I would have thought they'll major very heavily on making sure that any Australian runner does not get even a sniff of getting over the gain line, and then everything else is different.
Yeah, like Jonathan Davis and Hadley Parks, they were okay today. I think that they're going to have their hands full on the weekend. Gareth Davis, a lot is going to be coming off 9, I think, for Wales against Australia. That's how like you said, they're going to shorten them up in the midfield and then try and go wide. But yeah, it's a different animal, even with Fiji as well after us. I know we're looking ahead after that, but it's a difficult group.
That's all we have time for this week on Brian Moore's Full Contact with the Telegraph and Mitsubishi Motors. Thank you very much to my co-host Lee Byrne, and thank you to all our guests. Make sure you check in with us every Monday here on Full Contact throughout the Rugby World Cup, and thereafter we'll have all the latest news, previews, reviews and debate during the competition. Please do subscribe to the podcast to make sure you don't miss an episode during the Rugby World Cup and beyond. And write a review whilst you're there if you have time. But for now, it's goodbye.
Full Contact, in association with Mitsubishi Motors. Drive your ambition.